Welcome to No Shame in the Home Game, the podcast that cares how your home feels, not looks. I am Lacey, your co-host in, I don't even know right now, and compliments. Sarah and I were just talking about compliments. Here with one of my favorite complimenters, my co-host Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Lacey. I want to celebrate how my house, or not my house, my office specifically feels. I think we mentioned the wallpaper last time. I finally got enough wallpaper, finished the wall, and now when I look in my little screen of myself, it makes me so happy. It just feels so warm and comforting, and it's everything I wanted. So I really worked on the feels these past 2 weeks.
Look at you leaning into it. I also love that you took little things that you're like, I like this because you took inspiration from my wallpaper, but found one that felt more like you and just pulled in what made you feel good. I love it.
Again, so much of my decisions are on the back of your intrepidness. When I think wallpaper, I think permanent. And then you were so insisted. No, it's just peel and stick. You can just lift it right back up. No, it's not hard. And I was like, oh, okay. So I can do wallpaper without it being like a lifelong commitment. Let's try this. Even with my office, I keep trying things and I'm like, oh, I'm not getting married. I'm just trying things.
Yeah,
And everything's an evolution. We say that in the podcast. It's for a chapter in your life.
for
So,
sure. If there's anything that I'm good at, it's let's just try it. It is rubbing off on you in a positive way.
yes.
Sometimes it's not always positive. We were hanging a swing in our yard on a tree, and we'll just
Oh,
say,
no.
poor Joe did not
Oh,
mind
no.
like my let's try it ness.
Did anyone get hurt?
No, no one got hurt. No one got hurt. He just was not happy with the process, which I don't blame him. But because I'm like one of those people that's let's MacGyver this, right? What rope do we have? Do we have a string? Like, perfect example, one of our wreaths for Christmas. It's to this day still has old headphones as the thing that hangs it up on the wall. That's what I used to create the hanger. And I was like, "Yeah, that's what I had at the time. That's what I needed, and it still works. Let's move on."
Love that. I see that as like a reuse, reduce, recycle. I'm like, yeah, you had it and it worked
Yeah,
and you get to reuse something. That's awesome.
yep. It makes me giggle too whenever we get it out. I'm like, "Oh, there's the headphones." Anyway, we're wrapping up Ashley's story today. This blows my mind that we're already here. And again, this is another one of those where Lacey was sick. I wasn't there. Ashley and Sarah's final episode is a duo, not a trio. But I think what has been interesting for me about Ashley's journey, and I know I've said this before, is that it's about the tweaks, it's about the details. She's someone that, in my mind, has it all together, but doesn't feel like it because of these lingering tweaks and details.
Yes. And highlighting what I just said a few minutes ago about it being about different chapters in your life.
Yeah.
It's her toy room with 4 kids, 4 different ages. At one point, everything in there was dictated by choking hazards, and that's changed, right? And so it's evolving with the different ages, which is a lot of work.
Mm.
And one of the things I will compare and contrast with Ashley's episode versus Tyra and Teresa's was much more concrete steps. And Ashley's was a little bit more, I was going to say global, but that feels like corporate speak.
Are we going to circle back on it?
Circle back. It's a little bit more talking about the principle of going through things, about teaching kids ownership. We discuss a little bit more of those moments where, as a parent, you're trying to show them how to do it, but not do it for them. And so I really like this discussion because it highlights all that part about parenting that you didn't realize you were signing up for when you become a parent. And you're like, oh, parenting is all these little things that we have to decide. Are we keeping these? Are we throwing these away? How much stuff are we going to have in the house? So we do discuss it a little bit more on a larger topic, which I always enjoy.
Awesome sauce. Let's jump on into Ashley episode 3 and wrap up Ashley's story.
Welcome, Ashley. We've got episode 3, No Shame in the Home Game, to talk about your kids' playroom. and hear how that's been going. But as we know, life happens, so we can really catch up on just whatever's on your mind, to be honest.
I love it. Well, I'm excited to be back. It's gonna be weird when I don't hang out with you, anymore on a monthly basis, but we'll just have to keep that going outside of the podcast.
I was gonna say, I'm always up for a conversation with you, no matter what that looks like. So, yeah, we could totally keep this up. I love hearing your point of view, and honestly, your sense of humor is so unique that I really savor it.
Dark and twisted sometimes, a little dry.
You don't get a lot of people with that dry sense of humor. I
Mm.
grew up watching British comedy,
Oh, yeah.
and it's you really have to shift your mindset to that kind of humor. So when you lay it out there, my brain is like, ping, ping, ping. Did that come from your family of origin, or did you feel like the black sheep of your family with that sense of humor?
No, it's totally my family of origin. It's the Canadian in me, a different style of humor, very dry. And yeah, it's definitely like I watch British TV and it feels like a family reunion.
I had a totally different sense of humor than my family growing up. And
Mhm.
so British comedy was the first time where I'm like, oh, there are other ways to be funny besides with the people I'm surrounded by. It really called to me. So yeah, when I hang out with you, I'm like, oh yes, there it is. That feels good. That feels really good.
I hope I can live up to it. Try my best.
Um,
Pull out my
just be
material.
just be you. Just be you.
Mhm.
It'd be interesting to see what your kid's sense of humor.
Oh, yeah.
Is it like yours?
Especially my son. My son is 9 and he has the sense of humor of a 40-year-old man. It's awesome. When my kids were babies, again, like this is how I talk all the time. I might swear less when I know that lots of people are listening, but generally speaking, this is what it is. And so when my kids were really little and I would just like monologue my day kind of thing, and like my son was like 1 or whatever, I'd be like, someday you will appreciate how hilarious I am. Right. And he's like, snack, but he's so fast. And I love it because he'll, like, go through the room as I'm, like, saying something and chuckle to himself and then walk away, and I'm like, "Ah, it's happened."
Too have been saying for years to my son, one day you're gonna understand how funny of a household you grew up in. Like,
Mhm,
you're gonna realize not everyone's household was this funny. And yeah, no, my son too, he's 11 now. He likes to listen to comedians, which is really tough because a lot of comedic material is not age appropriate for an elementary kid.
mhm,
But oh my gosh, he likes to spout out, like, other comedians' stuff, but put his own twist on it, and yeah,
mhm.
same thing, I'm like, "Okay, I feel like I've peaked as a parent." Now that my kid is walking around, he did a joke this morning, it's the voice of a Kennedy at dinner. I can't do it. It was like, "Don't ask what cream corn can do for you, ask." It's like this whole thing, but anyway, so, yeah, I'm right there with you. We're like, "This is my goal as a parent, is to
Yeah,
impart comedic wisdom to my child."
yeah, oh my gosh, it's awesome.
So the reason we're here, when you came to us, we zeroed in on helping your kids manage their own playroom. I love that you had the mindset of, "These are their items, this is their space, like, I wanna guide them, but I'm not gonna do it for them," which I
Yep,
thought is man, I want more parents to impart that onto their little ones because they need to learn how to do that, and giving them ownership over a space, I just think is just so great. But you wanted to make sure that items were getting rotated out if they're not being played with, if they're broken, making sure that things are applicable. So we had come up with a general plan of seeing stuff in the playroom as categories and then piggybacking onto your Sunday morning routine of sheets and pickup and cleaning and giving them a few minutes to pick a category and go through it. Tell me, where did you have a conversation with your family? Did that ever come up? Did you try something different? No wrong answers.
yeah, definitely conversations were had. Definitely pushback was abrupt, but it's not like I was saying before, it's not like this is new. My kids push back on changing their sheets. Not all of them, but some of them push back on changing their sheets on the weekend. And so it's just that's really par for the course. It's I feel like in the same vein, if I was like, "Okay, guys, now we are going to pick a category and we are going to go through and you are going to throw stuff out." And they were like, "Okay, mom, that sounds like a great idea." I'd be like,
wait, what? When does the other shoe drop? Like in those cartoons where somebody yells and all the windows get blown out of the house. I was like, no, I am
Yeah.
not lined up for this. I think that the idea of putting the expectation out there and then it's like a gradual adoption of said expectation is really important because I doubt, highly doubt, and maybe it's just me in my life, but I highly doubt that anything that you put out that is seemingly a drastic change for your kids is going to be received well unless it's we're having ice cream for dinner because it's just is what it is. Kids they like their routine and they like their stuff and also in their play space. I have made the mistake in the past of going through and picking up a bunch of blocks that are on the floor only to realize that I took the unicorn base and now there's no place to put the gnome. And there's a story that's happening and there is a whole world that's going on that I don't know about because it lives in someone else's head. And I just messed that up. And I don't want it to be that. I don't want it to be like the drama and trauma of trying to clean up after yourself. There was some pushback. However, I guess the other avenue that I resorted to in saying we need to start doing this more is there are markers that are in here that are dry. When you find stuff that doesn't work, when you find stuff that isn't like you're not playing with, let's start there. Like, how about if today we go through and pick up the dried markers and test those out and all of that and just try and do it that way versus more of a like prescriptive, now we will do these things and you will love it.
Absolutely. And I think you brought up so many good points. One, yeah, you've got 4 different kids with 4 different personalities. So even to try to get them all on the same page is impossible. Let's be realistic. And it really was a jumping off point. And like you said, you put out this new idea and it's going to be a slow adaptation. I always talk about that low hanging fruit. Okay, let's just find the markers that are dried, like making it really simple. And I think too, I think with kids, their perspective is so different. I think when they hear something that's about change, there is sort of this unsettling feeling of everything's going to change, right? So if you make it really bite sized, no, just get rid of the markers that don't work, right? It feels like a really comfortable in for some
Mm,
kids. You just started the conversation, and that's all we can really do is not turn our backs and pretend it's going to fix itself, but just start the conversation. And I love
right.
that you were talking about the pushback. They changing the sheets every week. I just had this with my kid where he hadn't brushed his teeth before bed. And he came back with, "You didn't remind me." And I was like, "Oh my goodness. We have brushed your teeth every night for your entire life. And you're telling me now at 11 years old, you need a reminder?" So it's like you with the sheets. Like they're naturally going to push back. That's just a role. I always think about that story of what is it, the scorpion and the frog. And it's just, yep, it's our role as parents to teach them this stuff. And it's their roles as kids to be like, I don't want to do that. Because let's be honest, it's boring
Yeah.
stuff. It is, kids want to play. Even adults don't want to do this stuff.
It's true. With my kids, I tell them just brush the teeth they want to keep. And they're like, wait, what? Oh, or like my youngest is, but I have all my baby teeth. And I'm like, fair, don't brush them, see what happens. And he's, oh, okay. Like, what? But yeah, no, I think that that idea appealing to interests in terms of there are toys in the basement that they know are in the basement that they want to come out. And so having it framed as more of a bartering type situation versus like initially it was like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to take these toys and I'm going to put them down in the basement. That's trauma, very small, but that is the ripping apart of the ecosystem of their playroom that they have set up for themselves, right? Versus there's already stuff in the basement. They know what's down there. They know that this is going to happen. This is where things live that are not being used. If you decide that you want the thing, if you want the farm with the tractor or this and this, there has to be a trade that takes place. So there is a currency that works for them that's happening versus me just going in and saying, I'm going to take out these 20 things. They're gone. Too bad. And so they then get to say, all right, I want to trade out this for the Paw Patrol tower that's in the basement. And I mean, they definitely come over with one block of Lego and they're like, can I trade this for the tower? And I'm like, no, like equal value. in terms of, like, real estate has to be had here in order for this transaction to work, but I see you with your cute self.
And that's a great example of I use the example of having a boundary on things, right? And so it's you want the toy room to be theirs. You've given them the boundary of this room for them to, like you said, create that ecosystem of the playroom. And then there is the, okay, you've got freedom within this, but if you want to bring something else in, here's the boundary. You have to trade something out. So
Mhm.
it's you're not dictating. I remember learning from this parenting expert, and I can't remember the two words, but it's like on one end of the extreme is a dictator, and on the other end of the extreme is whatever the opposite of a dictator is.
It's not authoritarian because that's, like, on the left. It has to do with just saying no, not ever saying no to anything.
Right, and
Yeah,
this parenting educator was talking about how both ends of the extreme are actually both really hard for kids and
yeah.
scary. And she was saying it's actually finding that middle point of there are rules and there is freedom, but having freedom within the rules. And that's what I hear you saying with your kids, giving them the structure, and then you're also giving them choices within it and giving them that incentive of if you give up this, then you can get that. And I use that example of if somebody's birthday is coming up or if there's a holiday where they're going to get lots of gifts. It's like, all right, the closet's full. If you want room for new toys to come in, what do you want to trade? What do you want to donate to the preschool? What do you want to donate to your cousin? And just giving him that. I always think about the expression. Have you heard it? Easy now, hard later, hard now, easy later.
Mhm.
And it's, yeah, this stuff is boring. Going through the markers is boring. Deciding what to get rid of is boring. But if you learn that now as a kid, it's actually going to make life easier when you're older. If you don't want
Mhm.
to teach them now, that's fine. That is the easy path. But then your kid's going to be really struggling when they have their own space and they don't know how to get rid of stuff or go through those markers, right? Like we're trying to teach them that skill, which, yeah, it's not easy.
No, it's not, and it's also too I also don't want anyone to be under the impression that, like, I had this conversation, like, a couple of times, and we swapped things out, and, like, now my playroom looks like a showpiece. Like, I think that's the other part too that people get hung up on is the idea of, I did the things and I followed the steps, and now there's still, like, mess in there. But what kind is it? Is it a mess of overwhelming things are, like, crammed into shelves and, like, all over the place, or is it the mess of play? Play is not neat. It shouldn't be neat. And that is, like, unstructured play when you have imagination and creativity and all of those things that people don't see because it's happening between 2 kids or it's happening in your own head and all that stuff. That is inherently a mess, and that's the point. And it's just this idea of creating the space for that to happen, but also creating the structure for when that's over, for it to go back to where it needs to be, so there is that reset for next time.
Absolutely. And I mean, you and I are so on the same page, twin flames. Yeah, it's letting them understand if you have too much stuff, there is no open floor to build that Lego set, to create that space for the unicorn to live. By limiting how much is in the room, we are allowing for that freedom of play. So again, it's that education piece and just that not it's not even a trade-off. It's just if this, then that.
Mhm.
I always think back to when my son, he would get an idea and very much ingrained. I'm trying to not use the word donkey. You know how like donkeys just dig their heels in. He was a little tiny kid and I picked him up from daycare and the teacher was like, "Just so you know, he didn't have his snack today." And it's not that he wasn't allowed to have a snack, it was that he had to wash his hands first because we were outside in the sand. And he chose to stand in front of the sink and not wash his hands while we had snack for 20 minutes. And I was like, "First of all, sounds like my kid." And she's like, "But I told him, you can have your snack after you wash your hands." It was
Yeah.
very much if this, then that. I've really tried to take that in as I go forward instead of those hammered down dictator, authoritarian, this is what it is. It's just if this, then that. If you have space in the room to play, then you can utilize all your toys better.
Right.
But going back to what you said in the beginning, it's yeah, you put the idea out there and they naturally pushed back because they're kids.
Mhm. But it's also too, like, having, when you say, like, easy now, hard later, is that is gonna apply across the board, right? So if you're not having these conversations right now, that means that it's gonna be that much harder to have those conversations going forward. So, it's not always necessarily like the conversation yes, the playroom is the topic, but the conversation is more about modeling the element of boundaries and compromise and freedom and flexibility and how that all comes together. Because if you say no to everything all the time, no, 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 everything is super strict, it is going to come back like that's hard. It's not, that's hard in a way that's not going to become easier later. And so it's that mix of figuring out where that middle place is and holding that space as the space to work towards versus saying, I just say no to everything so that they're going to be like better off in the future. Because I don't know an adult who's, thank you so much for being a complete jerk at work. Thank you so much. I really miss this from my family of origin or my childhood. You have really warmed my heart on this Christmas Eve. No, people are just like, that person is a jerk. Well, I am not going to do what they're telling me to do because I am now an adult and I don't have to. And I grew up like that. So it's that space of like mutual respect and compromise.
100%. And what you were saying in there too, I was thinking of this concept of like the nuance of understanding a situation from all angles.
Right.
If you do come down with that hammer of, I'm getting rid of 50% of stuff, no questions, no understanding, just I'm doing this. They never understand the situation of it from all angles. And so that hard now, so it's easier later. When you were talking about the whole no thing, there was this research study done, and for the life of me, I have not been able to find it again, but it was so interesting. They looked at cultures all around the world and how in most cultures outside of the United States, when kids ask to be a part of something, they're included. It's
Hmm.
messy, it makes things more complicated, but there's a sense of engagement, and the
Hmm.
kid learns how to make that food that you have once a week. They learn how to wash the dish, right? But there is such a mindset of, I'm going to say no because they're going to create more work for me. Okay, you're going to say no when they're 0 through 10. And then when they're 11, you're going to expect them to start doing chores. And you've been telling them no, you can't use the vacuum cleaner this whole time. It's like that whole thing of yes and no. Yeah, if you're always saying no, then they're going to stop being part of the process,
Yeah.
right?
It's definitely a cultural thing too. Like there are definitely lots of other countries, and this is very widely known, widely studied that there are other countries where children are very much a part of the day to day. Children going out to eat in restaurants, like children are allowed to exist as their whole human selves in their imperfect manners and their imperfect behavior and all of those things. And it's just accepted. Whereas this country still functions very much in a like seen, not heard mentality around it. However, if we don't allow children to have that space to be imperfect and loud and all of those things, and we just keep them quiet and on the side and like they don't have those experiences and they don't have that exposure, that is not going to help them in the long run. And it's also not going to help them when they have their own children. It's an impossible lift right now to think that you have children and they're supposed to go out into the world and act as though they are little tiny adults, because children are not little tiny adults. They are children. And if you don't clear space for them in your own patience and concept and all of that stuff, like it's not going to get easier just because you don't want to deal with it.
And I mean, in no way are either one of us, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm not dismissing how much more work it is
Oh,
to take
tons.
the kid to the restaurant and then have to take them outside when they start having a tantrum. Like, it is so much more work, but it's that hard now, easy later.
Yeah.
And I try to say this to a lot of, whenever I can, to people with young kids about participation. And I'm like, no matter what the home task is, they don't even have to be verbal. If they can walk, they can be part of the process. If you're taking the trash out, ask them to open the door. Make sure they're witnessing the process. Have
Hmm.
them stand there and be a part of it. And then one day they're going to be tall enough to hold a bag of trash. And maybe they can't take it out to the trash can, but maybe they can carry it to the door, right? Making dinner. No, they're not going to use the stove or the knife. No, but can they pull out a pot or a pan that's at their level that's not breakable? Clearing dishes. It's okay. You don't want them to pick up something that's breakable, but can they carry the salt and pepper back to the counter, or like the silverware that's not sharp? Can they carry it over to the sink? It's like finding that in for them to start to be a part of it and say yes and learn and see and do. And that expectation is there. I'm
Mhm.
part of the process.
I'm part of the family.
I'm part of the family versus waiting 10 years and going, why aren't you doing anything? Because you told me no.
Yeah. Or it's also in occupational therapy, it's called the Just Right Challenge. So it's figuring out what people can do. And this applies across the board, but figuring out what people can do. And if you either need to modify the activity or teach skills. And that's the whole balance and the whole push and pull that I use professionally or in practice. And it's figuring out like what the activity parts look like and what they can do and what they can't do, where the piece is that's gone awry, and what's the best way to overcome that challenge or that stopping point. Is it you have to work on the skills that you need to reacquire if it's an adult, or the skills that you need to acquire as a child? Or do you need to actually modify the activity because someone who's had a stroke and one of their arms doesn't work, not doesn't work, but it's impacted by their stroke, they're not going to be able to use a regular cutting board with two hands. So do you just tell them that they can't cut food for the rest of their life because you're a person who wants to live independently, as independent as possible? Instead of doing that, you use an adaptive cutting board. So you use a cutting board that has these spikes that come up and it holds the food. So it does the work that their second hand would do so that they are able to engage in that task to the best of their ability. And they are able to successfully complete that task. And with kids, generally speaking, it is learning the skills as they go. So it's exactly what you're saying. You're not going to have your kid cook a big baked pasta dish, right? But your kids can do things like they can stir the stuff before it's hot. They can help set the table. They can help do all of those pieces. And if it doesn't look perfect, it's okay. Also, like who's going to come over like on a Thursday night and be like, I would have given this dinner a 10 out of 10. However, the table is not set to perfection. Like it's your own house. You can do whatever the hell you want in your own house when it comes to like people learning things and making a mess.
Well, and I think that comes into getting clear on your objective.
Right.
Is your objective that it looks a certain way? Is your objective that it has to be done in a certain amount of time? Is your objective that you want to teach your children skills by including them? And again, anyone listening who's feeling that urge to push back, I understand it takes so much more gosh darn time. I do. I truly do. And if you always say no, they're never going to help. And it's not about including them with every single activity,
Yeah.
but finding, like you said, a step that is just right. And I used to work with an assisted living facility, and we used the expression about setting them up for success, which is the exact same thing, just more syllables. But it's the same thing. Like, there's this recipe that my son likes to do, and I find it to be very much a pain in the butt. But I'm like, if you help me do it, we'll do it. I have found the step that he can very easily do that reduces the burden on me, but I have to set him up for success. And then he does it happily because he's getting the recipe he wants at the end. And now that I've done it 2 times, it's, oh, this part is yours. I don't even have to tell him. And so it's like putting that little bit of input in the beginning for the output on the other end. We are very excited. Not only is the Home CEO course out and ready for you to watch, we are starting on the Home CEO Junior course. This is a bite-sized course for kids to learn how to be home CEOs of their space and get them ready to be home CEOs of their apartments or their dorm rooms or their houses one day. It starts now. If you are excited about the Home CEO Junior course or want to learn more, join the waitlist at joyfulsupportmovement.com/home CEO Junior. And so circling this all back to your kids' toy rooms, you're giving them that autonomy of managing a space that's their own so that they can have enjoyment, but also making sure that it doesn't become complete anarchy and chaos because they do need to learn the structure to be able to enjoy it fully and then
Mhm.
have those skills as an adult. We're right on the same page. Again, I think our souls were connected at one point in a previous life.
Well, and I think the important thing for people that are listening who are like, "That sounds great, lady," like, you can just go and put on your linen apron and Mary Poppins your way through life, and, like, your kids come out as these, like, fully formed like, shit hits the fan too, and that's okay. It's okay that happens. I want my kids to learn how to clean up their playroom, but that doesn't mean that I'm never gonna go in there again and rip through all the trash and pull it all out, because time is a factor in all of these pieces. I can teach my kids how to cook something on a Sunday afternoon if we don't have any sports and the groceries are done and all of those things. But, like, also remembering that, like, a Tuesday when 3 kids have activities going on and there's literally, like, a 20-minute swap over to have dinner on the table, this isn't the chef's dream that you're putting out. However, there are a half a dozen people who need to eat food so that it does not dissolve into some sort of Jurassic Park takeoff is really important because there's so much out there that I think gets put out as an all or none. It's you can either always be doing this thing, like you can always be the patient and engaged and quiet voice, like whatever parent, or you're the one who just says no to everything and you are like so pressed for this and everything moves fast and you don't have time and there's no. There is ebbing and flowing that happens. And because you exist in one space, you're not doing the right thing. And you exist in the other space, you're not doing the wrong thing. And I think that's really important because people put so much pressure on themselves to do the right thing, but the right thing is not always the same thing.
100%. And it goes back to earlier when I said that nuance of understanding.
Mm.
Yeah, I can't say never because that would contradict my point I'm going to make. I try to not make any sentence of absolute.
Yeah, never and always.
Never and always. They're all suggestions and ideas to create the scaffolding
Mhm.
for the general direction you want to go. Like you said, some days getting the food on the table is more important than including all 4 kids in the process.
Right.
Abso-frickin-lutely. That doesn't mean you never include the kids in the process.
Right.
It just means some days it's going to make sense and some days it's not. What is your objective in that moment? And then what's your overall objective? I use this example I call zoom in, zoom out. Zoom out. What's your overall objective as a family and as your parenting goals? Zoom out. And then zoom in. Is that going to work right in this situation? Okay, maybe not. But zoom back out and make sure you know your overall trajectory. And if you can keep putting drops in that direction you want to go, sure, if you've got 100 marbles and you're like, okay, it's going into this is my objective, I'm going to put it, okay, I hit it. But some of the marbles aren't going to fall in there.
Mhm.
Hey, get the majority, get 51% of them in there, and you're going in that direction. But like you said, don't just throw it out the door and just say, oh, it's never going to happen. Try it once a week, try it once a month. I don't know. Like,
Mhm.
just don't ignore any of these ideas because you think you can't do them always.
Yeah.
There's not that pressure. It's making it work with your lifestyle and having ideas of directions to go.
Yeah, it's too no one lives on Instagram. And if you are inspired by things that you see there, that's great. But if going there leads you to feeling terribly, that's not the place that you need to be because nobody on Instagram is raising your children. Every house is different. Every orientation, every schedule, every all of that stuff is all different. It's not an apples to apples conversation. My family looks very different at 5 o'clock with 4 kids than my neighbor who has 2. And maybe that means at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, they are making pizzas as a family. But at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, I am trying to feed the dinosaurs before my house gets raged on. And I love the dinosaurs. They're very cute, very sweet. They look like the ones in Jurassic Park before the rain. And it's just like that idea, right? Of right now, this is what I need to do. Also, remembering that I'm only responsible for my dinosaurs. One of my most favorite phrases as a parent is not my circus, not my monkeys. And my kids know this phrase very well because sometimes they will come home and they'll be like, so and so is doing this, or so and so is having this happen, or whatever. And I'm like, not my circus, not my monkeys. I can only attend to 4 because that's all I'm responsible for.
100%. And that is a foundational premise of No Shame in the Home Game is your house is not going to be managed like your neighbor's house
Mhm.
because we all have a different amount of living beings in the house. We all have a different set of resources, whether that's financial, time, emotional energy, physical energy. And
Mhm.
we all have different goals, like different expectations for our home unit and what that looks like, right? If one family, all they want to do is go camping every single weekend, the way they structure their house is going to be very different than the family that all they want to do is play games and be at home and try to leave the house as little as possible. You can't compare them. Not your
Mhm.
circus, not your monkeys. But if you can hear something from any one of these episodes, even if we're talking about the playroom, maybe you don't have 4 kids. Maybe you don't have a designated room for a playroom. But the principle of giving your kids the power and authority to learn how to manage their belongings,
Mhm.
right? Finding that core element. I know you know this, so it's anyone who listening, it's just, yeah, we don't expect you to do it like Ashley's doing it or like I'm doing it. But if you can find some nugget that will work in your home, then great. Take that home and try it on. See if it works.
And also not expecting that like the conversation will be the same. Maybe lightning struck and you have the kid that's, I really think that's a great idea. We should definitely rip apart all of this and just make it look more aesthetically pleasing. Like, that's not going to happen. But I also think it's important that people know that if you do get pushback, it's not a one that it's not just your kid. Every kid is going to push back. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a different way to do it where you'll get no pushback. It's that that's part of the trade-off is you can't at this stage, you can't throw something out there and expect it to be like always 100% well received, no issues. And yeah, like to your point, having not having a space, this for me is not about the playroom. It's about their ability to take on a task for themselves and understand that you have these things and you have this space. It just where this is a playroom. We can do this about their bedrooms. We can do this about the play area in the yard. We can do like any of it. It all applies. It's the skills that are transferable to other areas of their life. That's more important than what the shelves of their playroom look like.
100%. And I mean, and let's get real too. I would say kids are like squirrels.
I got a lot of squirrels.
They want to squirrel away
Everything.
everything. Everything. And that is I think that's their default setting. And it's like you said, you're not going to put this out there and they're going to embrace it 100%. That would be no. Like their natural tendency is to want to keep everything, even if that marker is dried out. Like your
Mhm.
example in the first episode of that bottle cap that's taped to that cardboard square. That might have been Lacey's kid. They want to keep everything. That's
Yeah.
going to be their tendency. And they're not going to want change. But that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean you have to flip it 180 degrees. And it doesn't mean that you have to embrace it 100% either. It's
Right.
like, okay, I see what you want. Let's talk about what is a good idea. And like you said, finding the in between, like where can you match so that they have those skills to apply to any of their spaces.
Yeah. I think about this in terms of like when people talk about like breaking horses. So you can make it so you can actually put a saddle on a horse and you can ride a horse and all of that. And how if you take a horse that's never been ridden before and you throw a saddle on it, like, first of all, the saddle's not going to stay. Second of all, you are not going to stay. Third, someone's going to get hurt. in this experience. And it's not because the horse is bad, and it's not because you are mean. It's because the two of you are trying to figure out how to do something that the horse has never done before. Maybe you've never done that before either, because generally that's how it goes with parenting, is that you've never done the things until you do the things. And so it's this idea of going piece by piece and figuring out how to get the horse used to being around people, having a blanket on, having a saddle on, and then following along with the direction. And that's really what we're after when it comes to trying to figure out the best way for everybody to live and work together where it doesn't involve just horses running everywhere and kicking things or squirrels.
I just pictured putting a little saddle on a squirrel. I think about when you're talking about breaking that horse, I think about one of my aha moments as a parent is realizing you don't say it once, you say it over and over and over. And it's like the toothbrushing example.
Yep.
We have been brushing the inside of his mouth 365 days. Maybe we've missed one or two here or there because of travel or chaos, whatever. And he's still confused about brushing his teeth at night, as your job as a parent, over and over, and like breaking that horse with that saddle. And then one day, you don't know when,
Yeah, no idea.
one day, no idea. But if you don't do it over and over, it'll never happen. And man, those moments when you see them do something self-initiated that you've been putting that drop in that bucket for years and years, man, like you're like, oh, they finally heard it. I only had to say it 2,000 times, but they
Right?
finally heard it. Like when my kid clears his dishes without me having to prompt him, I'm like, wow, it's really happening.
Yeah, when we come back from the grocery store, and I don't take all 4 of them to the grocery store, like, I'm not nuts, but usually 1 will come with me sometimes, depending on when I go. But I remember the first time one of my kids, I opened up the trunk of the car, and they, like, came around the corner and grabbed a grocery bag and were like, "Can I help?" And I was like, "Knock me over with a feather." Holy cow. It wasn't like, "Get out of the car and walk in the house." I'm like, "Yeah, you can." And also, I'd like a bullhorn because I would like to shout from the rooftops how incredible this is. And you have to do that too. It's not that you have to say these things a million and one times, is that you also have to acknowledge when those things are happening, because that is so essential. Because I do think for sure that kids want to be helpful. Like, they don't want to be in the way, or they don't want to like do all this stuff. Is they're trying to figure out, how do I fit into this equation? They ask to do things because they want to be a part of something. And so when they do these things and you're like, "Oh my God, yes, this is amazing. Yes, you just made my day." That feels good. And it's not, "You did this, and therefore you are good." It's, "Holy cow, that's so helpful. Thank you so much. This is awesome." And you don't necessarily have to fall down and all of that all the time. But when these milestones happen, if you have that expectation and they look at it as, "This is just the expectation," versus, "It really means a lot to me that you are able to help with this," that's going to also change the trajectory in a way that is, I would argue wholeheartedly, more likely for that type of help and behavior and things that we are wanting to put out into the world to continue to happen.
100%. And I think of too, back to the premise of the show, no shame in the home game. It is so much a better motivator to do something inspired by joy and happiness and glee rather than shame. I have to make my house look a certain way because otherwise I feel shamed if I don't. That is heavy and it doesn't feel great versus I feel really joyful when all my clothes are put away and it just feels good. That good fuel motivation will get you farther. So, like with your kids helping to carry the bag, giving them recognition of that's really helpful and I appreciate it is going to give them that good fuel that's going to go farther versus the shame. Why doesn't anyone ever help me? I'm always by myself. Nobody does anything. That shame is heavy and is not a motivator.
Mhm.
Right? And I know how it's anyone listening who's pushing back and saying, but they don't help me and I am alone and it is frustrating. Yeah, I validate you 100%. It is frustrating. And if we put that emotional weight on the rest of our family, they're not going to do jack squat.
Mhm.
They're not going to feel motivated by your frustration.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I've yet to
right.
see that happen, at least.
Yeah, and also recognizing that there are people out there that do say the things and they ask a million times and they are following all the steps who are going, yeah, no one is picking the bag. And like, now I'm over it. Now I am full of resentment and I hate this and it's awful. Is like, if you like Cinderella Songbird, every instruction or whatever, that all of a sudden everyone's just going to be like, ah, like twinkle of awareness. And then everyone flutters down to help empty out the car. There are things that may work out and there's stuff that's not. And if it doesn't mean that you have to circle back and figure out how to ask people in a way, it's okay to be pissed and it's okay to have that expectation. And you're like, listen, I put this out here and I did this and I laid it all out and stuff's still not changing. Stuff's still not working out. Let's have a conversation about this because I just live in the dark and stormy castle tower now and I don't want to, because that's also not fair, because then that's not only like the shame that is going out towards other people, but that is the shame that you experience on the inside of like, why won't anyone help me? Can't people see how hard I work?
I want to make it very clear. I don't say any of this stuff from high on the mountain like I have it all figured out. I still, like I said, I still have to repeat things over and over. But what I've recognized for myself is when I can take my frustration and those big, heavy emotions and find an outlet for them, not in the direction of my family,
Yeah.
if I can get the heavy emotions out in a safe way, and then I can get clear on the communication of, okay, they will hear me if we have a very calm conversation,
Hmm.
right? Like feelings, 100% valid. We had a listening expert, Deb, from the Hold organization. And yeah, it was just about you can't have a conversation when you're dysregulated. You can try to have a conversation, but
Not a successful one.
not a successful one. And so it's about regulating that nervous system so you can have a constructive conversation. Because
Hmm.
otherwise, everyone's going to be having big emotions if you come in with big emotions. And the emotions are valid. They're 100% valid. But yeah, find someplace else to get those big feelings out. I'm human. It doesn't always work out that way for
Yeah. But the intention is there, right? Like the intention with the playroom is to create a
attention.
space. The intention with the cooking in the kitchen is to have children that grow up and they learn how to do this stuff and they go off into the world and they're not like putting shoes in their oven because they're never going to use it. Like that's what you want, is you that's the goal. The goal is to pebble by pebble launch a fully formed human out into the world. And having these plateaus and having these dips and then having these like huge periods of growth is part of what's going to happen along the way. And yeah, it's just that having these conversations and having the consistency and having the expectations that things are going to work and things aren't. Even in my own life, like sometimes I am totally buried in work and I don't do all of the things that I normally do. But right, like no one's gonna run around and hound me about it. So sometimes my kids have a lot of things going on, like tournaments or big school projects and stuff like that. It's like there's got to be some grace in there and some understanding that they also have a different level of capacity than you do for handling things alongside. So, like, for them, their upcoming tournament might be the most stressful thing for them. Whereas your like product launch that has taken 18 weeks to develop and run the runway on, it's the same. It's the same. Like the level of stress that they're feeling and the level of stress that you're feeling is the same. The only difference is you've already passed that step and that's where they are. So acknowledging and honoring them where they are is going to help in that element of compromise and intention and getting to a place where everyone there's a mutual understanding and mutual compassion and mutual respect about that and how to move forward productively.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this has been so great. Ashley, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I think the more we can talk about it, it just helps other people to see the reality of the situation. And I know your intention too with your podcast and both. It just, let's all talk about it. Let's all just be
Yeah.
open about what's going on and what works for us, what doesn't work for us, and not judging other people for how they're doing things. So, thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think the more conversations that we have, agreed, is better because especially where there's so much input on motherhood and doing motherhood, that's where there's so many of these pieces that we can not necessarily fix, but we can sort of iron some of the wrinkles out and move forward in a way that is more cohesive and is more collaborative and actually like having coming from a place of a more regulated form of communication so that everyone gets their seat at the table.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Ashley, for being part of this journey and good luck with everything. And I know we'll be in touch because yeah, I don't want to not have these great conversations with you.
It's no secret that I love a piece of technology, but I really love when a piece of technology can combine multiple different facets of my life and make it easier. That's what Notion is for me. Notion is an all-in-one workspace where you can organize your thoughts, tasks, you can share. There's so much that you can do within Notion. You can head to joyfulsupportmovement.com/Notion and sign up today.
Welcome back. No shame in the home gamers. So that was our first participant, Ashley, her last episode. So we've gone through all of her work and bid her good luck because this work is never done. It's just you're at one step in the process, which just keeps going. I actually was thinking about that this morning because I'm moving artwork around in my house and I really have to go step back from this is where it's going to be. And I'm shifting to let's try it out. Very Lacey style. Let's try it out because life just keeps happening and we just keep adapting.
We do. And kids keep growing and changing and all that stuff. Just all of the things with it, for sure.
Speaking of growing, my kid went to get on the school bus and I was like, whoa, is he going to dig clams today? Because those pants are knocking on his knees. I actually just placed an order for some pants because I told him, I said, hey, we need to get those out of your closet. And he goes, then I wouldn't have enough pants to wear to school each week. Okay, so that means, again, teaching kids how to operate. Okay, so that's a signal that we need to get more pants.
Yeah, you do laundry too well. That's what that tells me because ours is like, Isaac's mom, where are all my pants? I'm like, I don't know, bro. They're somewhere. They're in the they're being washed. It's fine. Actually, right now, their clothes got washed on Thursday, and then I fold them. And I've been saying they have to put them away, especially Isaac. Iris will help, but Isaac is old enough. He's 5. He knows where his clothes go. He can put them away. And I folded them on Iris's floor. And guess what's still there on Monday morning? Everyone's clothes. You know what? Doesn't hurt me. Whatever. Okay.
It doesn't hurt anyone. And I always think about different tasks in the home as either like a straight run or a relay. You're in the middle of a relay with the laundry.
Heck yeah.
And it's just that's the step that it comes next. I think maybe we don't want them living there in perpetuity.
I'm just surprised Iris hasn't been like, guys, what? Get this out of here. What are you doing? Because she very much would be like, this is my space.
Yeah.
Get out of here. But she hasn't.
I'm imagining her if you actually did fold it all, like she's gonna go in there and jump into it like a big pile of clothes and muss it all up.
If I had to guess, I heard Joe at some point saying, leave the laundry alone. I think it was getting ready for bedtime at some point. I think that has happened. I have
Okay.
emotionally separated myself from that because, as I think we talked about in season 1, you can't take the laundry away until I've folded it all because I need the validation that I've completed
That's
it.
right.
If I am folding, I usually fold on our bed, but I was folding in their room because I was trying to make their lives easier. It's fine, whatever. and the kids get on the bed, I'm like, "Do not touch the laundry," because I just don't want it's my personal feelings, and it will cause me harm. But now that I'm done with it, okay, whatever. I've emotionally removed myself from that situation.
Well, you may want to verbally pass the baton
I
to
know.
someone else. If everyone's been scared away from touching the laundry, if it's mom's project, there may be some miscommunication over whose turn it
I
is.
think it's very generous for you to say that's what you think's happening.
I am trying to relate it back to home CEO and
Yes.
looking at the steps in the flow and where the hiccup may be.
Yeah. Yeah. We like to end our episodes with a moment of gratitude. So sharing the middle, I've been doing conversations with people in my life to explore different parts of it. And I think when this comes out, the part two of my friend Emma, we talk about being lifelong friends and going through girlhood and like seeing each other in different phases of our life and that kind of stuff. Do you know when you talk to someone and it just brings them back into your orbit more? Which is great because Emma lives like 5 minutes away. So she took me to Costco last week because Costco is a hard thing for me to do by myself. We went together so she could help me with all the big boxes and getting it from her car to my house. Great, great thing. Very helpful. This week, Carolyn wants to go with me. So we've, we've got that coming up. But as a beyond just our Costco run, I also had lunch yesterday with one of our friends from high school who she's still very close with, came into town from Chicago, and then we brought in another friend who was in our she was in our friend group and she just lost touch. Apparently, she only lives like 5 minutes away as well. So we all had brunch and it was just delightful. It's so nice to just be with a certain set of people that you're like, oh, we all just know each other and this just feels so good and so right. And you're giggling like you were when you were 17 about stupid stuff, but then also joking about how now orange juice gives you heartburn. It was really lovely and beautiful. And it brought me so much joy in so many ways because not that I didn't have lovely friends in high school or anything like that. I have really separated myself from that period of time because of like my own relationship with myself. And so it just felt good to also reconnect with that fun person that I was then too. So, not that I'm not fun now. I'm just saying just to get different parts of me back.
I love that.
Mm.
Yes, I know that feeling so well. I have a friend I've known since 6th grade, and we are not in 6th grade anymore, so it's been many a years. And yeah, every time we have one of those really great conversations, it just feels so full. Like this
Yeah.
person knows what I was like then
Yes.
and still knows me. And it has such a unique feeling.
It's just good
So,
for your soul. There was just something and there was also just something so lovely about falling back into being the people who we were. I'm a little different now. I was the mama bear of the group, and so I've let back on that a little bit. There just was so many things that I'm like, this just feels so nice and so full and gosh, brought me so much joy.
oh, I love that. And I do want to make a little side note, funny story when you were talking about how you went to Costco together. I was reading on Threads. I'm at a stage in my life where I don't want a friend that I can go to the bars with and stay out till midnight. I want a friend that I can run errands with on a Saturday and make it a good time. And I'm like, oh, you have an errand friend.
Joe and I go running errands with Joe. Like if he and I have a date together, the two of us, that's what we do. Like we go to Home Goods and we putz around and run to different places. And it's my favorite thing to what's our favorite thing to do together. So I feel that to my core of how much joy you can get from just doing errands with someone.
That makes me happy.
That's the purpose. That's the point.
And then you said Carolyn wants to go with you next week. I pictured, remember back in the day, dance cards that women would tie to their wrist? I was picturing you having an errand card, you're like, "Who's gonna go with
Who gets
Costco with
to go?
me?"
I've been reading a lot of historical romance, so you know I roll up on the dance card. But I know I'm so in demand. People wanna run errands with me. It's
"Who
fine.
wants to go to Costco with me?" "Oh, I'm full, check back next month."
We
I love
can't
that.
go every week. It has to be every other, okay? That's just too much.
Let's see, my moment of gratitude. Okay, yesterday was a beautiful day. We went to this trail. It's this really nice 1.2-mile trail. It's paved and even, but you go through a lot of wetlands and it's just so nice. And yesterday was so beautiful. So we went, my son and my dog. And my son was actually curious about lots of things. What's that tree? And oh, look at that bug. Like it was shimmering. It was an iridescent green. What's that bird calling right now? And it was and so the whole walk, and it's interesting because since he was little, I've been pointing stuff out like that. But at a certain point, it was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I'm just babbling. And then it came back, and I was like, oh, he actually wants to talk about this stuff. And so we spent the whole walk pointing out ducks and trees and looking for snakes. I was like, oh, my heart was so full. And then we got to the end, and he goes, that was really nice. And I was like, oh my gosh. Not only did he ask me questions, he enjoyed it. And it made my heart happy. So
I
it was
love
just a
that
nice day.
so much for you. I love it so much. It's
It
not
was
for
a
me,
nice
but
day.
love it for you. I don't hate outdoors. I want to sit on the porch. Like I need to be able to go inside easily. I have been on a journey to make my back porch essentially a place that I can lay down in multiple places, and we are almost all the way there. So that's another big thing that's been happening here.
I do have to say when you said that about the porch, that reminds me of Sarah from participant one. They bought one of those. You can put it on your deck and it's semi-enclosed. It's got a roof and then you can draw the curtains open and
Yeah,
close. So if you want it,
like a pergola type thing.
yeah, it's like I'm outside, but I'm not. And she
Man, we are one of the same. We are birds of a feather. There we go. Because she also is not a bird gal either. That's what I want to, like being outside, but not. That's perfect.
but not. Let's be honest, but not.
I have gotten joy from talking to you today, Sarah.
Thank you, Lacey.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for listening to No Shame in the Home Game. We hope you can take a little nugget to use in your own home. Remember to subscribe to the podcast in your player of choice, like us on social media, rate and review, and share with all of your friends. You can always visit joyfulsupportmovement.com to learn more about No Shame in the Home Game and the other Joyful Support podcasts. While you're there, you can join the newsletter or sign up for the Joyful Support Village. Now go out there and spread joy.